I don't follow any religion. I can't say I believe in any god, and I certainly don't participate in any form of worship. But when I meet a stranger in my travels who is extraordinarily kind to me for no particular reason, I often look up at the sky and say, "Thank you, God." My first week in Mexico City was difficult. The charming apartment I booked for the month was right next to a busy main road where the nonstop traffic squashed any hope of a good night's rest for 3 days straight. Away from the main road, the neighborhood was beautiful and calm, with tree-lined avenues and a colorful variety of Art Deco, colonial, and modern architecture. In my sleep-deprived haze, I wandered into a large park. Covered benches bordered the walking path. It was 2 p.m., and every spot seemed full. I spotted a bench that was occupied by only one person. He looked American, with brown hair that stood straight up in a pompadour. He sat with one leg crossed over the other as he sketched a can of soda. I asked if I could please sit down. He nodded with a warm, gracious smile. I sat next to this kind stranger who continued sketching diligently. He was working on different views of the soda can. The page was nearly full. I introduced myself. The kind stranger's name was Colin. I told him I hadn't slept since I arrived in Mexico City 3 days ago, and I was looking for a quiet place to live. I think most people would say, "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you find something soon." I did not expect him to pick up his phone and start contacting his friends in the city, asking if they or someone they knew had a room available. One of them actually did, and a cheap room too, but it was in a neighborhood far away, and I wanted to stay more central. Weeks later, while staying at his apartment, Colin told me it was the first time a complete stranger struck up a conversation with him, and the spontaneous encounter would blossom into a lasting friendship. He recalled I looked rather ill when we met. He actually glanced at my wrist to check if I was wearing a hospital bracelet. He grew up in a small town in North Carolina and taught himself Mandarin when he was a teenager because his best friend was Chinese. Colin wanted to speak to his family in their native language. This intrigued me. Everyone I've met who learned Mandarin did so to further their career. The fact that he taught himself such a difficult language and for such a charmingly unexpected reason told me I was speaking to a very intelligent and self-motivated person. I booked a smaller, more expensive place on a quiet residential street where I'd be able to get a good night's rest. Colin offered to help me move. All I had was my carry-on suitcase and a large backpack, so I could have managed it alone, but he had the time, and I think he was worried about me accidentally wandering into open traffic in my sleep-deprived state. My new place had a tiny kitchenette, a private bathroom, a narrow desk with a chair, a small closet, and a queen-sized bed. The bed occupied most of the room, making it feel rather cramped. I wondered if I should live here for 6 months, but quickly dropped the idea. I found a room in a large shared house that was available in 2 weeks, but I couldn't extend my stay at my current place to bridge the time in between because someone already booked it. Colin saw my dilemma and invited me to stay with him and sleep on his couch until my new home was available. He was in a similar situation a few years ago in China, alone in a foreign country with no place to stay at short notice. A kind stranger helped him, and he wanted to pay it forward. Now, I don't recommend doing this with every stranger you meet in your travels or anywhere for that matter. Please use your best judgment if you ever find yourself in a similar situation. Colin's apartment was located in Juarez, a lively neighborhood full of restaurants, bars, and nightlife. I was surprised there was a small Asian community here, complete with a Korean fried chicken shop, milk tea cafes, Japanese grocery stores, and a Chinese hot pot restaurant. There's an official Chinatown in downtown Mexico City, but it's a complete joke and I don't recommend it. Some new nightclubs opened near his apartment since he moved in a month ago, which alarmed me since I was a light sleeper. He reassured me that he already ordered a white noise machine that would arrive any day now. I was supposed to sleep on the couch during my 2 weeks there, but the music from the clubs downstairs was too much. On the first night, I knocked on his door like a 7-year-old who woke up from a nightmare and asked if I could sleep in his room, which faced away from the street noise. Colin kindly obliged, and as I expected, was a complete gentleman. When the white noise machine arrived, we discovered there was a whole spectrum of colors: brown noise, pink noise, blue noise. We tried a different setting every night and decided that brown noise was our favorite, mostly because it sounded funny. It was only after meeting Colin and securing a suitable place to live did I begin to truly enjoy Mexico City. In those 2 weeks, we went to Chapultepec Park, the upscale neighborhood of Polanco, and the Downtown Historic Center, which was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, all the while exploring the diversity of Mexican cuisine. I tried grilled cactus for the first time, which I tried to cook at home and failed miserably. I also tried pozole, a traditional soup made from hominy and meat, seasoned and garnished with shredded lettuce, onions, and spices. During Aztec rule, human meat was used for special occasions. My favorite drink was café de olla, which is black coffee with cinnamon and raw dark sugar, served in a clay pot that gives a special flavor to the coffee. And of course, we tried all kinds of tacos, gorditas, and enchiladas. Luckily, we never got sick, which I heard was quite common in Mexico. We made dinner at home a few times, where I was in charge of the vegetables and Colin was in charge of the meat. He went to university in Beijing, worked in Shanghai, taught himself how to code, got a remote job in software engineering, then moved to Oklahoma. He got laid off last year, and instead of immediately finding a new job, he decided to take a break from work and moved to Mexico City. With his ample free time, he was learning Spanish, improving his drawing skills, and experimenting in his kitchen. He loved anime TV series, Coca-Cola, hot dogs, and computer games. I'd often wake up hours earlier than him. He'd find me in front of my laptop at the kitchen counter, ready to make us both some coffee. The two of us had drastically different experiences of China. I was born in Liaoning province, where most of my family still lives. As soon as I step off the airplane, I am surrounded by my relatives. I also used to travel to Dongguan for business, and every day was fully booked. Colin lived and worked in Beijing and Shanghai. I envied his first-hand knowledge of daily life in these cosmopolitan cities. He knew China better than I did. He dated a few Chinese girls, but nothing serious. He recalled one girl who, on their first date, said mixed-race babies were really cute. He decided not to see her again. He introduced me to his best friend, Arturo, a charming Mexico City native who spoke fluent Mandarin and English. They were roommates during university back in Beijing, and Arturo now worked as a freelance translator. He could even recite Chinese poetry. There was a tattoo on his right arm that said, "I love Beijing." On his left arm was a tattoo that said, "Made in Mexico." He also had a tattoo of the number 5 on his wrist. I asked him what it meant, and he replied it was to remind him to stop after 5 drinks on nights out. Arturo married his high school sweetheart, who was finishing her degree in criminology. They bought an apartment in Juarez for only $100,000 and had 3 puppies. Colin was also considering buying a property in Mexico since it was so expensive to buy in the United States. He already had temporary residency and decided he'd still rather live here in Mexico City if he got a new job. His parents were divorced. He said they got married for all the wrong reasons. His mother was a very attractive woman, but was getting older and feeling the urgency to have children. His father wasn't ready to have children, but didn't want to lose such an attractive woman either. So they got married, had a child, then got divorced years later and remarried more compatible partners. Colin was in his mid-30s and liked the idea of being a father someday, but he acknowledged it wasn't up to only him. That kind of decision was between two people, and he hadn't met the other person yet. While staying at his place, I read The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. It follows the story of Lilith, a slave on an 18th century Jamaican plantation. At one point in the story, Lilith learns how to read. Her friend tells her every time she opens a book, she's free, and she's the only one who needs to know that she's free. Now, I have very little in common with any of the characters in this magnificent novel, but that sentence I can relate to. We often forget that books are passports, allowing the migration of the mind. I've traveled more within the pages of a novel than I ever have in real life. Every night, I tell Colin what happened from chapter to chapter, sometimes reading out loud a part I found particularly moving. He had sleeping problems. I'd often find him playing his Nintendo Switch or studying Spanish flashcards on his phone after we turned off the light and said goodnight. I wondered if there was something deeper causing his insomnia. I've had sleep troubles of my own when I lived in Vietnam, back when I didn't understand where my life was going. Colin didn't come home one evening. He sent me a message saying I'd have the apartment to myself, and he was staying in a hotel. He was casually dating several women at the time, and one of them wanted to have sex that night. He said he was ready to focus on one person, but he didn't want to be in a serious relationship with any of the girls he was currently seeing. Even though I had enormous affection and appreciation for him, I had to say no when he asked me out on a real date. He had the courtesy and consideration to ask the day before I moved out, so he wouldn't make me uncomfortable during the 2 weeks I slept in his bed. I just didn't feel the things that needed to be felt in order for me to say yes. He helped me move my things into my new home, and a few months afterwards, started dating a beautiful Mexican girl from Veracruz, who later moved in with him. Every week, he'd come visit me in my neighborhood for coffee and a game of chess. We're still friends today, as I'm editing this over a year later, after this Latin American journey has ended. I have a feeling we'll continue to be friends for a long time. I often hear people say, making new friends is difficult when you're an adult. I don't disagree. I think having a true friend at any point in life is difficult. And when I say friend, I mean a consistent and reliable source of comfort and support. I've never been one to have an extensive group of friends all in one place. In a group of 20 people, I'd be lucky to bring one into the folds of my confidence. My friends are scattered all over the world, which means it's a treat when I visit them or when they visit me. We may not be getting together for brunch every Sunday to chat about the details of the week, but I find that talking to each other less allows us to share the bigger picture of our lives. These long-distance friendships are precious because we actively wish to stay friends, instead of the passive convenience of living across the street or working in the same office. Mutual respect and admiration bind us together. Our paths may seldom cross physically, but it makes these relationships no less valuable. Find out what happens next in this video, where I explore the gastronomy of Mexico, attend some fabulous parties, and reveal health and fitness secrets for traveling the world long term.